Welcome to the special edition of The Tea with April. We're going to knock the pot over because so much is going on. Last night, we saw all the hand claps and congratulatory hugs with the candlelit ceremony or what have you outside of the Capitol building. But today, there seems to be a change. And with us today, we have none other than Maryland U.S. Senator Angela Alsobrooks with us. Hello, Senator. How are
Hello, hello.
you?
I'm
Well,
doing,
go ahead.
I was saying I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. You were happy last night after this historic vote, a vote on something that Donald Trump campaigned on, saying that he will release the files. The thought was transparency. Now there is redaction. We don't know what's redacted. And then Pam Bundy may also have some kind of loophole. The attorney general may have some kind of loophole in the release of these files. What are your thoughts just hours later after you had this celebratory moment and now this?
Well, you know what? So my thoughts haven't changed much. Let me just go back so that we remember how we got here.
Mm,
We have a number of victims. These are women who were girls, many of them at the time that they were victimized. And recall, April, that I'm a former prosecutor, started my career as a domestic violence prosecutor.
and you're a
Uh,
parent
and,
too.
and I am a mother of a daughter.
Yes.
And so I spent over a decade protecting victims of violent crime, victims of sexual assault. And so we need to just step back and remember what we're talking about here. A series of victims. And I might add, we know now that those victims are not Democrats only. These are Democrats and Republicans who were victims. And in my mind, it doesn't matter whether they're Democrat, Republican, or unaffiliated. I think everyone ought to remember that we're talking about years spent protecting really nasty people who victimize basically little girls. And that can never be lost on any of us. And so all that we are seeing, all of the shuffling of the chairs on the deck, I am grateful that we reached last night. And that last night, it reached a point where really there was no choice in the matter, because I think Americans are beginning to speak about the fact that we don't want to protect nasty people who harm little girls. And you know what? And so no matter what is said today, I'm convinced that when it is all said and done, the truth is going to come out. It's bound to come out. It only, the truth will always rise. And we're reminded also that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it does bend toward
Bend
justice.
towards justice. That's
That
right.
justice is coming. I think it's unavoidable. I think that there are people who we will see continue to do what they can. This is what they always do to protect those who are in power, but protecting these people against really young people, young women, and young people who were sexually abused. This is horrible. It is horrible, but it won't last. The truth will come out.
What's done in the dark comes to light, and it looks like the light, there is a bright disinfecting light that's trying to shine on these files.
And to bring justice, let's use that word. These women deserve justice. That's all they've ever been asking for. And you know what? And I'm convinced that over time they're going to get the justice that they so deserve.
And one of the pieces that you mentioned, you said this is not a partisan issue. One of the victims that spoke last night at that candlelight vigil after the vote, she said she voted for Donald Trump. One of the
Yes.
victims said that. And I thought about that. I said, that's right. He campaigned on the fact that he was going to release the Epstein files. And she believed him. And now she is fighting against him. And that's so interesting. And then, and what I want people to really understand, Donald Trump's name is not the only person there. Melania Trump was there as well, the first lady. We don't know what she did, but she was also at Epstein's parties, and we can say that. So, and that may be some of the redaction we don't know as of yet. But how do you think the American public should look at this?
Again, they should look at the fact that we're talking about victims, many
Hmm.
of whom were children at the time that they were victimized, and ask ourselves as a country, do we want to protect pedophilia? That there's a word for it. People who have sexual contact with children. And I believe the vast majority of Americans who have wives and sisters and daughters will say no.
Mhm.
And again, this is not a moment that is anything to do with, I don't care what the president says. This is not about Democrats. This is not even about Republicans. It's not about people who didn't vote or are unaffiliated. It's about more, it is about the moral choice. What is right in this case? And there is justice that these young women deserve. And that's how people should be looking at this. This could be anybody's family. It could be your daughter, your niece, your wife, your sister. That's what we're talking about is they deserve justice.
This bill wasn't signed last night. This was not signed last night after the final Senate vote. Um, Realistically, put your prosecutor hat on and your U.S. Senate hat on. What's next? What do you expect? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think it will be signed. I mean, I think that the pressure is building now. I think that people on both sides of the aisle have spoken. In the one instance we have seen so far, this is the I think the most unified vote we've seen. The House voted all but one person. And I think it's very clear what ought to happen from here. I
Mhm.
don't think there's a choice. You know, it was also done by unanimous consent in the Senate. So, and each of those legislators represent the people. And the people have spoken virtually unanimously. If we count the voices in the House who represent Americans all across our country, the senators who represent Americans all across our country, the will of the people is nearly unanimous, is to release it now, to sign it, and to release the information and to bring justice to those victims who have been waiting for a very long time.
Americans do not have tolerance for pedophilia, for this fact that women were abused as well as men um, in these parties, etc. But does this give you pause about what the tolerance is for? Because and pedophilia is wrong. All of this is wrong. And let me be clear. But 2 weeks ago, we saw the East Wing of the White House torn down at a tune of 250,000 or 60,000. It went to 300, I mean, 250 million to 260 million, so a tune of 300 million. People were not getting paid, they were being fired, laid off. But it's this that could be that last nail in the coffin. These poll numbers are down, according to AP, 37%. What does that say to you? Because it strikes me there's been great pain, but this is more about humanity. You understand what I'm saying? It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
All of it is, April. I mean, you know what? I'm not surprised. Are you surprised? Has the character changed of the people who are making these decisions?
Mm,
And it is not just that we are defending or protecting the identity of people who had inappropriate contact with
yeah.
minors. It's also that the same people who apparently don't care about bringing justice to these victims don't care whether you can eat, whether
Mm,
you get your supplemental nutrition benefits. They don't care whether you can afford your health care. They don't care whether or not you can afford the cost of living, of groceries. So it's not surprising. It is all a part of the same kind of character trait that says we do not care whether the average American, hardworking middle class person can live. The everything that we have seen in this administration has been consistent. That's the one thing we have to say. Haven't they been consistent? If you looked on day one of this administration, go to the swearing in ceremony and check back in our minds at who was sitting behind the president the day he was sworn in. It was all the billionaires. So everything that has been done here has been done to benefit that class of people at the expense of everyone else. There's nothing surprising about this scene of this movie. It's just a building crescendo of inhumanity, of cruelty, of immorality, of illegality. It's just
yeah.
all of it.
You're talking about the second term. I remember the first term when
Much
Barack,
the same.
yeah, well, yeah, the first term he was sitting, well, I remember both, but the first term, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama was sitting behind him when he was talking about the carnage, the carnage. This is the carnage. I'm like, what carnage were you talking? This is the carnage. 42 million people not getting SNAP. And the issue of health care still has not been addressed. And we're kicking the can down the road, still with a potential government shutdown again because the issues that were originally addressed are not being addressed. What do you say to that?
Well, again, I mean, we're not surprised because I don't know. Well, we should be surprised because we were lied to. This president said on day one that he was going to bring down the cost of groceries. They said that, they demanded to have these files released. I mean, everything that was said. And so it turns out it was just not true. It was just not true. And I think they say when people show you who they are, believe them.
Believe them.
And
Come
we
on,
better
Mike.
believe right now exactly what we're seeing. Again, how much more do we need to see? The immorality, the illegality, the inhumanity, the cruelty, the lying, the trying to erase our First Amendment rights. What else do we need to see of this movie to understand where we are? And I think, you know what, too, I believe that the people are beginning to see it. That's the reason the poll numbers are so low, is because I think that people are beginning to see it, and we're going to have next year, when those midterm elections come, the people
Another
will have their opportunity to speak.
another tsunami. And what we are failing to say, Republicans are breaking with him. Republicans see it. They are breaking with the president. Marjorie Taylor Greene is breaking because she could not be you. She could not run for Senate. That's why she's breaking, but nonetheless, she's still breaking. AOC said that was the reason why. And then Donald Trump said that's the reason why. But still, it is for a just cause, what she is doing, whether it's because he kiboshed her Senate run or not. But
Well, you know
let's,
what, April, again, but you know what? But you know what? Thank God she wasn't the only one.
yeah.
Every member in the House except one
Mm-hmm.
voted the same way.
Yeah.
So that means that this thing was without dispute. It was
Yeah.
without controversy. It was what had to happen. And they represent
Unanimous minus one.
unanimous minus one.
Yeah. So you are on fire when it comes to lies, deceit, distrust, etc. You going after um our face of health, RFK Jr. You sit on the Senate Health Committee and the Special Committee on Aging. What was your problem with, well, I don't, to say what was your problem with RFK is so broad because we all have a lot of problems with him. But specifically, what was the issue when it came to this most recent town hall?
Well, you know what? I can tell you, there's a concept in the law, res ipsa loquitur, that says the act speaks for itself.
Mm,
There was a filing that I made with Senator Wyden that talked about the first 203 days of Secretary Kennedy's time in office. And it included not only canceling of funding to the tune of $9 billion to NIH. We talked about the 3,000 scientists who were fired unceremoniously. What has happened with the misinformation regarding vaccinations. So this man, to my mind, is literally making us sick, and he's causing people to die. And this is not by way of exaggeration. In the United States of America, there should never be a time where you die of measles again. A disease that we had all but eliminated, but we're seeing a resurgence of it. When we talk about the people who have been fired unceremoniously, the scientists, I think about people, for example, from the Centers for Disease Control, the
yes.
same people who led us through the swine flu epidemic, the people who led us during anthrax. These are serious and real people who quit, and then some were fired. And so we're left now really less safe than we have ever been, where from a medical standpoint. And so that is really what my objection has been. Let me just be clear about this. I don't know RFK Jr. as a person. I don't know anything about him, but I know he's incompetent. And I know that his incompetence is going to cost us. So whether or not my objection to him is not a personal objection because I don't know the man, but I know that what he has done is to dismantle the public health system in our country in a way that will not only cede our position across the world, we should be a global leader in science and research and medicine. That's what allows us to be exceptional as a country. So not only cede our position globally to China and other places, but it is also the fact that, again, he is hurting us by dismantling this public health system so you don't have access anymore to the research you need for things like fibroids. I have a fibroid bill to research fibroids. Close to 80% of all women by the age of 50 will have this painful disease, this painful condition. But these are the kind of things that he's disrupting: cancer research,
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, all of it.
This weekend I was in Philadelphia this past weekend, and I was doing something with the NAACP and Sanofi pharmaceutical company, and it was talking about coast to coast data for people of color when it comes to healthcare. And the things that they were talking about was so prolific, profound. And basically, in this moment that you just detailed, we have to advocate for ourselves because we don't have the scientists there. We have to talk to our doctors, communicate better with our doctors. And one thing that really bothers me, Senator, and I know many people, when I heard this, I called my friends, being a human being, being a friend, not a reporter. When I heard that the people who are in charge of communicating the information about toxicities, about uh, like if your pacemaker is recalled, that shook me to my core.
Yep.
I called my aunt, I called several friends, I called my sister in law. This is the time that we're in. And
Hmm.
if you're not healthy, God help you. That's basically what you're talking about.
Oh, it is absolutely. And as you are mentioning there, so the people who have this information are the people who've been there, whose units have been eliminated, the people who collect really important data. These are the people whose positions have been eliminated. But you know what? I'm going to say this. We're talking now about how awful it is, and we're not exaggerating. And I want people to remember to stay fired up because we are going to not only retake the House next year and shift the balance of power, but we're going to get that White House back as well. What we're seeing now is an infantile approach to governing. And by that, I mean, children break things. They break everything around them when they get angry, but they don't build anything. We haven't seen anything yet that this administration has built. They're very good at breaking things, but we're going to have to repair, rebuild, and provide the information in the interim as best we can, just like you just did with your friends. We're going to have to communicate with each other. We're going to have to really bind together because we're going to have a whole lot of rebuilding to do when these people are done. But guess what? They will leave, and we're going to be able to rebuild.
Last question. Chuck Schumer, where does the Democratic Senatorial Caucus stand with Chuck Schumer?
Well, I can tell you this. The Jedi mind trick is telling us right now that we should turn on each other. The people who have caused the harm in our country are these Republicans. And the ones who have caused our health care to be unaffordable and don't care at all, don't give a rat's behind, whether you can afford your health care, whether you can afford your groceries, whether or not your right to speak publicly are preserved. And so I am focused right now on working with anybody who will repel the evil plan of this Republican Party. And that's where I think we all are right now, is that we are in a really a time leading toward authoritarianism. We're clear about that. And what we have to do right now is to continue to do everything we can to defeat these Republicans.
Maryland U.S. Senator Angela Alsobrooks, thank you, Madam Senator, my soror. Thank you for
Thank you
sitting.
so much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
sipping
April.
tea with us. Thank you.